You want to know what power really looks like? Let me tell you. It's not the corner office. It's not your name on the building. It's walking into a black tie gala where you're not even on the guest list anymore, carrying a single piece of paper in your leather folio that's about to blow up a $375 million deal. The champagne, already chilled. The pens, lined up like they're about to perform surgery. The CEO, practicing his victory speech in the mirror. And me? I'm the ghost they tried to erase. The footnote they deleted. The legacy overhead they laughed about at happy hour. My name is Jennifer Daniels, and tonight I'm going to teach them a very expensive lesson about what happens when you erase the woman who built your empire. Grab your popcorn. This is going to be good. I spent 12 years at Cypress Holdings. 12 years. VP of Strategic Holdings, though that title never quite captured what I actually did. See, while the executives were out playing golf and doing magazine photo shoots, I was the one in the trenches doing the real work. Asbestos mitigation at properties everyone else had abandoned? That was me. Zoning nightmares across 3 jurisdictions? Me again. Eating cold dumplings in my car during stormwater board meetings. 4 property deal restructuring mid-flight using hotel Wi-Fi and a lease I'd saved in my inbox since 2011? You guessed it. I could recite parcel ID numbers from memory. I knew which county inspectors had gambling debts. When our urban infill plan went sideways, I rewrote the entire project scope overnight and personally got the variance approved through a backdoor advisory board vote. Cypress grew from a boutique fund into a $2 billion regional powerhouse because of me, because of my work, my late nights, my unglamorous, unsexy brilliance. But my name never appeared in shareholder letters, wasn't on the company website until some intern added me under compliance support. Compliance support, like I was there to file paperwork and make coffee. I didn't need applause. I never did. I just wanted accuracy. And when they took that away from me, well, that's when things got interesting. 8 months before everything went nuclear, I was working late on this nightmare called the Croswell Urban Parcel Alignment. 7 parcels, 3 municipalities, owners and litigation over air rights, a half-demolished trolley depot that every preservation society wanted to turn into a yoga studio. It was a mess, the kind of mess only I could untangle. And that's when I did it. That's when I planted the bomb. Buried deep in Section 11D, under Joint Redevelopment Oversight Protocol, a section so boring that grown men have fallen asleep reading it, I added a clause. A rider. Simple, really. It said that any transfer of portfolio assets exceeding $40 million would require written and notarized consent from all original signatories to the joint venture framework. My reasoning to the founders: we don't want some future stakeholder flipping these properties to a parking lot conglomerate just to juice their quarterly numbers. Levon barely looked up from his phone. Sure, add it. Sounds like good governance. They e-signed it during a meeting about something completely different. Nobody asked questions. Nobody flagged it. Because let's be honest, corporate governance documents are boring until they detonate in your face. I saved that document everywhere. 3 different folders, encrypted backup. 2 printed copies. One went in the legal archive. The other, I tucked it in a manila folder in my desk drawer, behind an old stapler and a brochure for an arbitration seminar in Tulsa I never attended. I labeled it CUPA JV5 Final, Consent Rider Trigger Clause. Was I planning revenge? No, I was just being responsible, being the adult in the room, like always. But I'd just armed a legal tripwire, and nobody, not the founders, not the lawyers, not the hotshot executives who'd come later, nobody knew it existed. Then Grant Pelham showed up. Picture this: tall, overconfident, shiny like a rental Porsche, with a handshake that screams, "I read a book about authenticity once." His team? A pack of aggressively mediocre Ivy League graduates with matching pocket squares who moved through our office like locusts. They called it modernization. I called it asset stripping with a PowerPoint deck. The second Grant's group finalized their majority buyout, everything changed. Desks cleared, people disappeared. Suddenly, there were new titles everywhere: Strategic Vision Partner, Chief Narrative Officer, Real Estate Transformation Lead. My title, it became a question mark on a whiteboard in a conference room I wasn't invited to. First, I stopped getting copied on acquisition reports. Then my access to the compliance drive expired. When I asked IT about it, they said, "Oh, you'll need to clear that with Grant's office." When I reached out to Grant's assistant, I got a meeting invite, role transition discussion. I knew exactly what that meant. 2 HR reps I'd never seen before, clipboards, corporate speak, operational streamlining. This isn't about performance, Jennifer. It's about evolving needs. 2 week severance, Cobra continuation. I raised my hand. You don't need to list the benefits, just give me the packet. I stood up, smoothed my skirt, picked up my pen, not to take notes, just out of habit, and I left. But here's what they didn't realize. You can reorganize me out of your org chart. You can delete my email. You can take my name off the website. But you can't erase what I built, and you definitely can't erase what I signed. Over the next few months, I watched them try to delete me completely. My name disappeared from the internal directory. The quarterly memos I'd written, my analysis, my words, were rebranded as Cypress Transformation Insights. They kept my work, but stamped it with bullets about future-forward leadership, whatever that means. They brought in some consultant from New York to streamline compliance redundancies. Translation, let's throw darts at legal documents we don't understand and hope nothing catches fire. At a happy hour I wasn't invited to, some 24-year-old called me legacy overhead, loud enough for 3 vendors to hear. People laughed. Then came the press release. A draft for a $375 million portfolio deal. The deal I'd built. The deal I'd spent 3 years negotiating, restructuring, and saving from disaster. It was being announced as a visionary consolidation led by Grant Pelham, whose leadership redefined Cypress's approach to urban repositioning. Not a single mention of me. Not one line about the woman who negotiated air rights while eating dumplings in a parking lot. Nothing. I stared at that release for 10 minutes. I wasn't angry. I was just cold, clear, like stepping barefoot onto frozen tile. I didn't need credit. I never did. But I needed it to be accurate. And that $375 million deal, it wasn't one deal. It was 6 interconnected properties, bound together by shared liabilities, regulatory obligations, and, oh right, a little clause in a redevelopment framework. A clause they'd completely forgotten about. A clause that required my signature. And that's when I smiled. I waited until 9:06 a.m. on a Tuesday to send the email. Timing is everything. Subject line, minor framework irregularity, JV5 consent writer. I sent it to Thomas R. Kleen, Senior Acquisitions Advisor at Bellway Holdings, the company buying the portfolio. I'd met Thomas at a dinner back in 2019. Nice guy, drank club soda, took notes on napkins, the kind of person who was absolutely terrified of missing something important. Perfect. My email was short. Thomas, you may want to review the Crosswell framework from 2021, specifically the rider under Section 11D. There's a compliance inconsistency tied to consent authority that may require immediate attention prior to execution. Best, JD. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Then a text. Jennifer, reviewed Section 11D. Please call ASAP. Confidential. TRK. I called him back. No small talk. Why didn't anyone mention this clause? He asked, voice tight. Because no one read it, I said. Or they assumed it was ceremonial. And it's not. It's notarized, time-stamped, still binding, especially if the aggregate transfer value crosses the $40 million threshold. Pause. I could hear him flipping through pages. Which it does, I added, several times over. Another pause. And you were one of the original signatories. I was the compliance officer of record at the time. The clause doesn't hinge on my employment, Thomas. It hinges on my signature. I heard him exhale like he just dodged a freight train. This could stall the entire transaction. Only if someone ignores it, I said calmly. But if it's addressed properly, it can be resolved with a revised signatory memo. Clean. No headlines. No drama. He was quiet for a moment. Then, you going to the gala? I smiled. They didn't invite me. Well, he said, you're invited now. The closing gala at the Larchmont Grand was exactly what you'd expect. Money everywhere. Polished oak tables, velvet chairs, a chandelier that probably cost more than my car, champagne buckets gleaming under the lights. Grant was in his element, laughing too loud, shaking hands, adjusting his cufflinks every 30 seconds. Every move screamed, I won. I arrived last. No announcement, no spotlight. Just slipped through the back door in a black dress, my leather folio tucked under my arm, and took a seat against the wall. Invisible. Just how I like it. The mood at the signing table was light, celebratory, but I could see the tension in the Bellway executives' eyes, especially Evelyn Park, their general counsel. She sat near the end of the table with a thick leather binder, not touching her champagne. A junior notary started prepping the documents. People were laughing, making jokes about who'd sign first. Then Evelyn spoke. Calm. Clear. Before we proceed, I'd like to clarify one small matter related to the Crosswell Redevelopment Framework, Section 11D, the Rider Clause. The laughter didn't stop immediately. Grant waved his hand dismissively. That's a legacy clause. Internal counsel cleared it. Doesn't apply. Evelyn slid a document across the table to Clifford Haw, Cyprus's lead attorney. The clause requires unanimous written consent from all original joint venture signatories before any transfer of assets exceeding the outlined threshold. She paused. There are 6 such assets in this portfolio. Grant leaned in. She doesn't even work here anymore. She's irrelevant. Clifford read the document once, then again. The color drained from his face. It's not tied to employment, Grant, he said quietly, his voice shaking. It's tied to the joint venture, and it's airtight. Thomas Klein, the buyer's agent, slowly turned his head and pointed, right at me. Every head in the room followed. I stayed seated, opened my folio, and laid the original signed framework on my lap, writer highlighted, notarized stamp gleaming under the chandelier light. No smirk, no gloating, just quiet gravity. Clifford looked at me, hands trembling. He whispered 2 words that echoed through the silence. Oh God.
She doesn't even work here, Grant snapped, his voice cracking as he slammed his hand on the table. This is obstruction. I finally stood, slowly, calmly, like I was opening a filing cabinet. No override is possible, I said evenly. The rider is contractually tied to personhood under the original joint venture, Section 11D, Subclause 2, not to employment, not to current role, just name, signature, and consent. I walked to the table, pulled out 3 documents from my folio, placed them down one by one in front of Evelyn. Original framework, I said, tapping the first page. Executed rider, notarized, time-stamped, archived 3-fold. 1 copy submitted to Delaware Corporate Registry, another submitted with the 2021 Crosswell redevelopment filing. The 3rd is here, in your hands. Evelyn scanned each page carefully, then looked up. Everything's clean. Chain of custody intact. Clause enforceable. Consent required. Grant tried one more time. You have no standing, no seat at this table. I didn't blink. You're right. You never gave me a seat. So I made my own, and I bolted it to the floor. Evelyn turned to Grant. Bellway won't proceed without the final signature. If we close in violation of this clause, we inherit liability exposure exceeding $80 million across multiple jurisdictions. Grant sagged in his chair. His voice came out small, defeated. What do you want? I looked straight at Evelyn, not at him, never at him. 3 things. 1. Public acknowledgement of my role in this portfolio's development, verbal and in writing, prior to close. 2. Retroactive equity at 1.2%, payable from Cyprus Holdings' share of net proceeds, not the buyers, payable within 30 days. 3. Rehire letter effective immediately. Title, Senior Director of Strategic Compliance, reporting directly to the board. No intermediary, no probation period. I walk in Monday morning with full access and authority, or I don't sign. Evelyn stepped out to consult with her team, came back 5 minutes later. We agreed to the terms. Grant said nothing, just slowly removed his glasses and pressed them into the table like he was trying to crack the wood. I walked to the signing table, picked up one of those perfectly arranged pens, and I signed. 1 line. That's all it took. Then I signed my rehire letter, Senior Director of Strategic Compliance, reporting to the board. I set the pen down, took a breath, and turned to leave. No champagne, no photos, no victory lap. Because I didn't need any of that. I didn't torch the empire. I didn't ruin the deal. I didn't scream or throw things or threaten lawsuits. I just owned the clause no one bothered to read. And in doing so, quietly, irrevocably, I owned them all. See, they thought they could erase me, delete my access, rewrite my work, laugh at me behind closed doors. But here's what they forgot. I don't work for applause. I work for precision. And precision is power.